Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined.
All right, hi everyone. Welcome to my True Crime Obsession here. Recording, going live actually with my second episode. And today I'm honored to have a special guest here in the audience, in the studio with me, Nick Graystone. He's joining me here in the studio. And for those of you that don't know Nick, he has his own podcast that he records here in Governor's Comedy Club Studios and is posted on the YouTube channel. It's Primal Scream. And if you haven't checked it out, please do yourself a favor and check it out. Nick is great. He talks all about true crime, movies, music, current events, and very funny. So, Nick, welcome. Thank you
very much. That was a nice introduction. I appreciate that. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So you and I share a common interest in true crime, and maybe we can tell listeners how we first met. It was a few weeks ago, right? And,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Seems like a different lifetime.
Oh, my goodness,
yeah.
Yeah,
only a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I know. My God, so much has happened since then. And for those of you that don't know, obviously, we met on July 14th, Friday, July 14th, when Rex Heuermann got arrested for the murders of 3 of the Gilgo Beach 4. So it was got arrested for the murders of Megan Waterman, Amberlynn Costello, and Melissa Bartholomew. So, but it's ironic because I remember that day. I wasn't working, and I normally get up like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. And that day I decided to sleep late. I get up around 9 o'clock and I look at my phone, and sure enough, like my phone was blowing up with text messages and phone calls. And I'm like groggy looking at my phone. And a friend of mine is like, "Are you kidding? Wake up, put on News 12. And I'm like, "What's going on?" He's like, "They caught the Long Island serial killer." I said, "You kidding me, right?" I figured they were joking.
Right.
And I'm just like sitting there, and he's like, "I can't believe I found out before you did." And I was like, "Well, yeah, you sure did." But I remember that day, I was like, "Oh my gosh," I'm watching the news and I'm thinking to myself, and there are all the media set up in front of Rex Heuermann's house, 105 First Avenue, Massapequa Park. And I'm thinking to myself, I got to get in the shower.
Absolutely.
I got to get down there. And I don't even know if I put roll-on on. I took a shower. I was just threw clothes on, and I just scooted down there to Massapequa Park. And I don't know about you, but the first thing that struck me is walking to his house. I knew they were going to be spectators, obviously, because on News 12 they showed all the people camped out. But I think the thing that really got me was there were people there behind the crime scene tape with beach chairs and drinks, and they're hanging out like it's a day at the beach.
Absolutely, it was a spectacle.
Yeah, it was crazy. But that's where I first met you. I saw you, and you were being interviewed by a woman from Channel 7 Eyewitness
Kristen
News.
Thorne.
Yes. Yeah. And it was so funny. I'm like listening to you, and I'm like, oh my God, this is my life. I'm like, I was a little jealous. I have to admit, I was like, oh, I really wanted to get interviewed, but
I was just at the right place at the right time. Like you said, your phone was blowing up, so was mine. My boy Anthony texted me, and he was like, add the address to your tour. So what he meant by that is the tour of Long Island with true crime is kind of like, for me, Amy Fisher's house, Joey Buttafuoco's house, and the Amityville house.
Okay. So, I could add a lot to your tour.
Right,
believe
exactly.
Me.
There's
I'll
other
give
spots.
You plenty of other things
but
to add
that's
to
like
that
the Merrick Road spot.
Okay.
So, you just go off Merrick Road and hit all these things.
Yep.
And I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? He's like, they caught somebody for the Gilgo killings. And I'm like, no way. So I was supposed to work until 1:30. So then I'm like, all right, well, I'll take no lunch and I'll leave at 1. And this is at 9:15. So I'm sitting there and I'm twiddling my thumbs and I'm like, dude, this is the biggest case that's ever going to be in the longest time. I have to get there. So that's exactly what I did. I went to my boss. I was like, listen, I'm taking an extended lunch. Got in my car. I'll come back, finish work later. And I got there, and I was right up in where the media was set up, and just watching it unravel, just like you.
Yeah, it was great, And the funny thing is, I'm watching him, the interview this guy. This got a Texas Chainsaw Massacre hat on. I loved your outfit. I was just like, oh my God, look at him go.
Honestly, it's
Yes.
like, tonight I'm
That's
wearing a
great.
Snoop Dogg hat. I mean, a Snoop Dogg shirt and a Metallica hat. So, like, I'm not wearing the Texas Chainsaw hat, but, like,
Yeah.
either it's horror or it's metal, but that's, like, my everyday attire. I
Love
did
it.
not wear that hat on purpose.
Yeah.
I was just wearing it, and I just ran out of work and just went there.
I
So,
love it. I
yeah.
love it. That's great. And the funny thing is, like, for anybody that doesn't know or hasn't followed this case, hasn't followed the media in the days after he was caught, like, you became a meme.
Absolutely.
I loved it. I was like, oh my God. We became friends on Facebook, and I'm looking at Facebook, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Actually,
Nick
before
has
I
turned
even,
into a meme.
before I even, like, when I got back to work, one of the postal inspectors came out and he's like, "Dude, you're a meme," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And then I'm looking at it and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is going viral right now," and I'm like, "Okay, 25 years of me plugging my bands, my movies thing and like everything else, and I'm gonna go." Famous or whatever, viral because of a meme of me, just like a normal thing. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
it was great.
whatever, just
Yeah.
got to roll with it and go with it. And I think it's kind of funny because
Yeah.
I got called by everyone, people that I haven't heard from in 25 years. They're like, dude, I saw you on the news. I saw the meme. So
That's so funny.
yeah.
I play poker in a league, and a lot of my friends, I have to give a shout out. New York No Limit Poker. So, anyway, but, a lot of my friends were like, talking, and they're like, this is Christine's Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You got to give her a break, man. She's not going to be playing poker for a while because she's going to be 24/7 with this whole Rex Heuermann case. And,
Of course.
you've been following it for so long. And I'm making light of it, but, it really is about the victims. And when you follow the case that long and you follow what happened to these poor girls, it's like, we're now living in it right now. I mean, I'm living that I'm alive to see a capture and finally see justice. I hope that justice will come. And,
I hope so too. I hope it comes the real truth comes out, and it's big. Just like when we met up and went to John Ray's thing in the library, and he said that this is a modern day Jack the Ripper.
Oh, absolutely.
And it is. It is.
Yes.
It's a big case, and I hope that the Suffolk County Police and the DA present a great case, and they just put this to bed and give some closure to some of these families.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and you mentioned that John Ray spoke at Smithtown Library. I think it was July 17th, only 3 or 4 days after he got arrested, Rex Heuermann.
Right.
And I want to give a shout out. That was an event that was hosted by Long Island Crime Expo, who was run by a friend of mine, Gina Leone.
Yep.
She does Long Island Crime Expo, and if you haven't heard it, you can look it up. She has a page on Facebook, and she goes to different libraries throughout Long Island, has different guest speakers come in, and it's really great. Yeah, John Ray actually was scheduled to speak well in advance before this all went down. So, and when you think about it, I mean, this man was so busy from the time he got caught, Rex Heuermann.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He
and
was
that-
saying
yeah.
now, it's on for him.
Talk about timing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was crazy. But, and just so, it was really interesting. So, I've been doing my true crime obsession for a while now, and on my Facebook page, and I finally decided to launch my podcast here, and it's been going great. But,
Good.
I chose that my true crime obsession as my title because I just feel like I've been obsessed with true crime from such a young age,
Me too.
So I want to put it out there to anybody that's listening. What is your true crime obsession? If you follow true crime, what is it? What is the one case that gets you? Or, and if you want to, we have a call-in number, 516-510-8381. If you want to call in and just share any thoughts. But for me, I know some of the cases that I've been obsessed with from a very young age. And I can remember back to when I was like 6 years old. I mean, Son of Sam.
We share that
Sam.
common thing
Yes.
because we were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
I pinpointed it to the Son of Sam 10th anniversary.
Yes.
My mother was pregnant. I was born in 1977, so she was pregnant with me at the time that they captured him.
Mm-hmm.
And today is the day, actually,
Yes.
the anniversary of his capture.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was, at that point, 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So when I heard about a guy supposedly taking commands from a dog, going out and killing people and hearing this, I was just like mesmerized. And that's where it just boiled from there, boiled from there, like listening to, watching interviews with him. And then it turned into my brother doing a report on Ted Bundy. So then I got involved looking at that case.
Yeah.
Then I got my first copy of Helter Skelter.
We'll get into that.
Yeah. But yeah, that's
let me
the Son of Sam is
Yeah.
definitely the first case that got me set the hooks in for me.
Yeah, for me, I mean, the Son of Sam case, I was 6 years old, and Mom, Dad, my dad's deceased, God rest his
Me
soul,
too.
but my mother, but I have to blame them. I really place the blame on them when it comes to
Right.
my obsession with true crime.
Because they had to take you to these places, right?
No,
when you were a kid.
Well, my mother was from Queens. My
right.
dad was from the Bronx. We had neighbors across the street from
His
Brooklyn.
hunting grounds.
So here I am, this Long Island kid, and it's the summer. It's the summer of like 77. And my parents have this newspaper spread out in front of them with the map of where all the killings are taking place. Now, I'm in the background listening to all this. And they're like, oh my gosh, I used to hang out there. Or I know a guy who lived on that corner. And like they're talking. And then all I keep hearing is Son of Sam, Son of Sam, Son of Sam. And
It's a catchy name, right?
Oh my God. In my mind, like I'm thinking this is like the boogeyman. And my parents always taught me like, the boogeyman's not real, he doesn't exist, it's but for me as a kid, yes, it did exist.
Yep.
Okay, and the boogeyman had a name, David Berkowitz, but the world would come to know him as Son of Sam, and I was so afraid as a kid, but at the same time I became obsessed with it. I mean, it was just crazy. And then I think the ironic part for me is like, and I look back on this as I was older, because I didn't really comprehend all this as a kid, but when he was arrested, and I look back at videotapes, like, this is the man who held the biggest city in the United States in its grip of
Right.
fear. Like, this guy looked like nothing. He was
No.
like a pudgy guy. I mean, this is the one everyone was talking about. Like, it was crazy. I just, it's
The pride of the Postal
Yes,
Service.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. It's funny because through Long Island Crime Expo and through Gina Leone, she actually had Carl De Niro as a guest speaker. And
Really?
Yes. And I'm actually friends with him on Facebook.
Nice.
I talk with him every now and then. But for those
He's
of you
a
listening
he's a
that
survivor.
don't know. Yes, he's
Yeah.
a survivor. It was actually October 23rd, 1976. He was, I think, the third victim of Son of Sam. I think Donna Lauria and Jody Valenti were the first. It was
Right.
July 29th, 1976. And then he was sitting in a car with Rosemary Keenan in, I believe it was Flushing, Queens. And thankfully, they both survived, but
Right.
they were both shot by Son of Sam. And I'd like to give a shout out to him. And, he's written a book on the case, of my life with Son of Sam. And I think I got the title wrong, and I apologize, Carl. But his daughter actually also made a documentary about his
Wow.
shooting and everything like that. But someday I'd like to get him in the studio.
Yeah, that's
possible,
great.
to
He's still
talk
in New
about
York?
This case. Oh yes, yeah, he's on Long Island.
Cool.
And he, to listen to him speak, about it, and the thing that he touches upon, I think, which is important. I don't know if you saw the Netflix documentary about the Son of Sam.
Yeah, of course.
There's been a lot of talk about whether or not he acted alone. And I believe that Carl De Niro believes, he's of the school of thought that, it wasn't just David Berkowitz, that he was part of a
I don't
cult.
think it was either.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at that documentary, there's so much information that came out, and
Kind of ties
Sam
into
Carr
the
and-
modern
yes.
day stuff now too.
Yeah,
with the
yeah,
theories.
absolutely. But
Yep,
I do
the Carr
truly
brothers.
believe that, like, because he said his description of Son of Sam, and he had a little bit of a description. It didn't look anything like David Berkowitz.
No, it
And
looked
a
like
lot-
one of the Carr brothers,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And the Carr brothers
yes.
and Son of Sam totally did not look
Mm-hmm.
alike at all.
Yeah, yeah. So it was that was a great documentary, and Carl's a great guy. And if he ever comes back through Long Island Crime Expo, I'll let you know. But
Yeah,
I'd love to-
absolutely. I'd love
for you
to.
meet
I'd
him.
love to meet him.
Yeah, yeah. But you also touched upon Charles Manson, and today is a very significant date. It's August 10th. and-
Today's the day they found the LaBiancas, right?
Yes, the LaBiancas were killed.
Yep.
1969, August 10th. Yeah, and it's just that's a case that's always been with me. Again, going back to my childhood. Most kids watch Disney movies as a kid. No, not me. My parents had me watch Helter Skelter.
It's so refreshing just like to be like, oh, the date, yeah. And like you could just say a name and be like, oh, yeah. The LaBiancas, like we know them.
Yeah,
you know?
like, and I was young, but I think a lot of it was my dad was in law enforcement. He worked he was a Nassau County police officer.
Okay.
And crime victims' rights and truth and justice and fighting crime, like that was something that really was part of his soul and part of his, motivation for doing what he did. And I think a lot of that kind of rubs off on me.
Yeah.
And I
That's
love him
cool.
for it. And
I have very
Yes.
memorable things about my dad with my true crime obsession because like he would be like taking me and my mother to like the crime scenes of like when it happened, and he would yell at us because he'd be like, you two are so sick, but I felt like part of him wanted to be there too, but he wouldn't admit it. But me and my mother, like we visited, like when OJ was on trial, like we went to LA, we ate at the Mezzaluna.
oh, nice. See, I say
yeah.
nice. People are like, what are you, nuts? But meanwhile, like, I'm like right with you. I'm like,
What did you have?
oh my gosh. Let me tell you something. I'm going to tell you my LA story in a minute, but go ahead. But
So-
I got some good LA stories.
So I got a book. I had Helter Skelter with me. I was about 10 or 11 years old, and my parents took me to where Sharon Tate's house was. They took me to the LaBiancas. So now they have a map of Spawn Movie Ranch.
Oh, I was
So
there.
I'm like, Dad, please. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm not taking you out into the desert where these hippies are. There's no way. Fast forward only up until about 6 months ago, I finally got to visit not only the spot of where Spawn Movie Ranch was, but I actually went down the canyon where they
Yes.
took the picture of with the Manson family in the cave.
I have a picture of that.
You went in there?
I posted it on Facebook
wow,
today.
that's awesome. Yeah, how
Yes.
crazy
So,
was that,
I
right?
know.
Did
I
you
know.
like when you were like going down there, were you thinking to yourself, I think I've gone too far? Like, why
Yes.
am I doing this?
Well, yes, but for different reasons. Because
Getting like attacked by a snake?
yes,
or like,
absolutely.
Right?
Because I'm going to talk about my LA story. So I went out to LA. Okay, I went out to LA in 2009 for the 40th anniversary of the Manson murders because it's just a case that's always stayed with me. My family knows this. They think I'm nuts, but like it always comes back to Charles Manson and that case. And
You
there
can't
was
beat the
just-
king, right?
Yeah, well, it's also about the victims. I mean, Sharon
I know.
Tate, I
She's
look at her and
beautiful
she was,
and,
there
yeah,
was
it's
just something
terrible.
about her. But so Scott Michaels is a guy that runs Dearly Departed tours out there.
Oh, yeah, I heard of that.
Oh yeah. So I went on his tour in 2009. It was great, and yeah, we went to 10050 Cielo Drive. We went to 3301 Waverly Avenue, the Bianca House. I mean, we went to all these different sites, and I met some people there. There's a guy named David Oman who lives on Cielo, and he opened up his house. He had like the ghost hunters there because he thinks that his house is haunted by the spirits of
How
like
close
Sharon
is he
Tate.
to the
Oh,
house?
he's like 3 houses down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Lucky.
so that was 2009. Now flash forward 10 years later, and Scott Michaels is having like a whole 50th anniversary weekend. So I'm like, sign me up. So, part of that weekend involved going to El Coyote, which is where they had their last meal. That was on August 8th. And then, I was doing a tour with the Manson, with, all the different sites. There was actually a party that I went to. They had a party honoring Sharon Tate for Valley of the Dolls.
Oh, that's the
Yeah.
dress and the glasses.
Yes.
Okay, I
So
saw
that
your
was
picture.
at
That's
Raleigh
awesome.
Studios in Hollywood, which was her first studio, and they had a whole setup. They had dinner. They had a woman there, Sharon Edwards, who actually was the stand-in for Sharon Tate on the movie Don't Make Waves.
Oh, wow.
She was more Malibu Barbie, where she was a surfer, and that's where actually the Malibu Barbie doll, where Barbie is like the big thing now, but Malibu Barbie comes from Sharon Tate in the
Wow.
movie Don't Make Waves.
I never knew that.
Yeah. So anyway, it was a whole big weekend, and it was great. And part of it, we were supposed to go to Spawn Ranch, on that Sunday, which was, I think it was was August 11th, 2019. But for some reason, I guess it's a national park or whatever, they just shut it down. They wouldn't let anybody go there because it was too dangerous. And, I was like, oh, I really wanted to go to Spahn Ranch.
You
And
went
I was
yourself.
Like, I did go myself. And I was really contemplating it because everyone's like, just be careful because there's snakes, there's like poison ivy. You better dress head to toe in clothing that, none of your skin is like exposed because you're going to get all scraped up and everything. And I was like, do I go? Do I not go? And I'm like, I was like, I'm here in LA. I'm like, I got to go because I was going back to New York in a couple days. I'm like, if I don't go, I'm going to regret it. So I'm going to end up driving there to Spahn Ranch. And it's not there anymore. For anybody that's listening, it burned down in 1970. So it's just land that's all grown over.
You can't even get in it now.
Yeah,
It's
but
like
I knew
off.
that it was by this railing on Santa Susana Pass in Chatsworth.
Yes.
So I parked my car and there were...
Across the street, right?
Yes. There's like a church across the street. So I parked in the parking lot. And I mean, there's a ton of cars going by and everyone's honking, Manson, and it's like... So I get there and I meet this couple and I was like, oh yeah, I'm like, I run my own website, My True Crime Obsession. They're like, oh yeah, we know My True Crime Obsession. And I don't know if they were pulling my leg. I was like, okay. They're like, yeah, we follow your page. It's great. I was like, yeah, I got to come down.
Let's take you to go meet him.
So we all went down, and I was kind of like, okay, a bunch of strangers. My father would be killing me. Like, why are you talking to strangers? Yeah. But I was like, you know what? I didn't want to go down there by myself.
You were drawn.
And I was like, I'm dressed. I'm taking the opportunity. I started walking down there, and I was like, and you're walking a little bit, and then all of a sudden you come to the cave. And anybody who's followed this case knows, if you've read Helter Skelter, there's pictures in the book, where they all hunched over on the cave and stuff
Time
like
magazine.
that. Yeah. It was pretty wild. But
you know what? I felt the vibes.
Yeah.
Now, driving there for me, I actually made a couple of videos just in case if anything happened to me, and I sent it to my brother and my friends. My brother was adamant. He was like, dude, you're a fucking idiot. Like, I don't know if I can curse, but you're an idiot. You're an idiot. Why are you going down there? There's going to be rattlesnakes and all this shit, and you're not kind of like, very limber and stuff, dude. You could fall down into this canyon. And I'm like, you don't understand, bro. There's a magnet, and I'm attached to it, and I have to go.
Yeah.
So I went down there, and I just felt this, I don't know, even though it's 50 years later, I just felt like this juju down there, this energy, and I was just drawn to it.
Yes.
And it was something. It was something to see.
Yep.
So
I'll tell you my funny LA story. So it was, I guess it was Thursday, August 8th. 2019, and Scott Michaels was having this party, as he does every year, at El Coyote. So that's where Sharon Tate, Wojtek Frykowski, Abigail Folger, Jay Sebring, they all had their last meal there. So I wound up going to this party, and I mean, it's packed wall to wall. It's just, so we're sitting in the back.
Was everybody dressed in like 60s garb too? Or no,
no, that was just for Raleigh Studios.
okay.
So I was just in regular clothes or whatever, and I walk in there, and one of the first people I meet is this woman that I met in 2009. She comes up to me, she's like, Christine, and I'm like, I can't believe she remembered me, first of all. And we just hugged it out, and I was like, oh my gosh. She's like, how you doing? I was thinking about you. I was hoping you were going to be here. I was like, yeah. And so anyway, there's a whole, there's something comforting about the true crime community because, you think you're a freak because you're into true crime, but yet you're with people who have the same interest you do and are as avid about true crime as you are.
It's kind of like what we got going on right now. We're just like going right off of each
I'm
other.
Sitting
with,
there eating dinner.
Our stuff.
Yeah, and there was
I'm digging it.
Actually, one of the speakers that was there, Scott Michaels, wound up getting the sketch artist. Who was during the trial, had done all the sketches during, and unfortunately his name escapes me right now, but he was selling some of the sketches and he signed them, and I actually got one of them. It was the one where Charles Manson holds up the newspaper, Nixon declares that Manson's dead. Yeah, I mean, it was a great
cool.
photo. Yeah, and he signed it for me, and his name was Robles. I can't remember his first name, but we just started talking about the case and everything, and I met this guy. His name was Tombstone Tourist. So what he does is he goes around to different famous cemeteries or tombstones, where people have died.
I think that's another nickname I have, too.
There you go. And he's like, so he goes to me and he's like, hey, what table did they sit at? I said, oh, let me show you. So we were on the other side of the restaurant. So I bring him over to the table where, where Sharon, supposedly it was the table where Sharon was eating her last meal. And it was hard to get to the table. And as I'm walking towards the table, there's this older woman there standing, and she's surrounded by all these gentlemen. And I didn't really clearly see her face, but I could see the side of her face. She had like a porcelain face. I mean, she was gorgeous. She had a scarf around her neck, and she had a little pooch in her hand. And she brushes right by me, and she's like, "Excuse me." I was like, "Okay." And I go over to the table. And as I'm at the table, there's a woman there sitting. Her name is Allison Martino. And I said, "I hope you don't mind." I said, "But, it's my friend, and we wanted to just take a picture of the table and, the seat where Sharon Tate had her last meal." She's like, "Of course. Why do you think I'm sitting here?" And I'm like, "I run my own true crime website." I said, "It's called My True Crime Obsession." Now, let me just, before I get into it, on my flight to LA, a friend of mine texted me, and she said, "Christine," she's like, she's like, "You got to check out this website. It's called Vintage LA, and it's run by this woman called her name is Allison Martino, and she does a website where she does a whole history of LA from like the 1930s to present day and how LA has changed." So I had nothing better to do on my flight. I'm checking it out,
Right.
So now I get to the table, and she's like, "Oh, I run a website." She's like, "My name's Allison Martino, and I run Vintage LA."
Whoa.
And I'm like, "Oh my God, I heard about you on the flight." I'm like, "My friend told me about your website and this and that." She's like, "Oh, that's great." She's like, and at this table was, oh God, Diane Warren, who's a famous.
Oh, the composer.
Yes,
Yeah.
Diane Warren was sitting at the table. Lorraine Newman was sitting at the table
Whoa.
from Saturday Night Live. Okay, and she
A-listers.
Yeah, and she's like, "Oh, you just missed." And I won't say her name.
You told me who it was.
Yes, but her first name, she's a famous actress. First name begins with a J, and her last name is like the foreign car company Honda. Okay, so you can figure out who I'm talking about. All
Yes.
right? And the reason why I say that is because she's like, "You just missed her. She just." I said, "That was her." I was like, "Oh my God," She's like, "Oh yeah, she was drunk as a skunk." She's like, she came over to the table and slapped her hand on the table and said, "I need to sit here because my friend Sharon Tate ate her last meal here 50 years ago," right? Apparently, she crashed their party. She was drinking with them, singing songs, and I'm like, that was my Hollywood moment.
She was only there for a few minutes and left?
I guess she was there for a little while. She was downing drinks, having fun with Allison Martino,
She probably went back on Golden Pond after that.
My friends are like, "That's who you ran into?" They're like, "Did you spit on her?" I was like,
Right.
"Oh, come on now, But she's got her, reputation in Hollywood, whatever.
Yeah,
but
she's not very liked, I don't think.
no,
but-
not at all. But here's the kicker. So now I get home, and I really wish I had done this while I was there. I get home, and I look at, Allison Martino. Who's this Allison Martino? Because obviously she's got roots in L.A. Apparently, her father was a famous actor in Hollywood.
Al Martino. Oh, my
Johnny
God.
Fontaine from
Wow.
The Godfather. And that happens to be one of my favorite movies. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
of course.
"Oh my God, I met Al Martino's daughter." I'm like, if I knew, I would.
Johnny Fontaine don't
It's
get the part.
It was probably a good thing because I'm like, if I had known that, I would have been gushing
Oh,
talking
yeah,
about
absolutely.
The Godfather all
You wouldn't have
night.
been talking about your podcast, your website or
I know.
anything.
I was like, oh my gosh. But I mean, that's my LA story. I mean, that one
That's
just kind
cool.
of takes the cake. you
Wow,
know?
that's pretty
And I was
awesome.
like, oh wow, to meet all those people. And
Yeah,
it's
one
funny,
shot.
Like how it was like 6 degrees of separation. Like just everything came together that night. And it was great. I told her, "Oh, Scott Michaels is here." She's like, "Oh, I'm a good friend of Scott's," And I ran back. I said, "Scott," I said, "What's her name is here? The one, Jay Honda." So he's like, "Oh my God, I got to go see," But I mean, anyone who was everyone was out that night at El Coyote because, I mean, it was, the 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. And let me tell you, I was renting a Airbnb in West Hollywood. And the restaurant was maybe 2 miles down the road, maybe 4 miles down the road. You talk about Long Island traffic being bad.
Oh,
Forget
dude,
it.
Hollywood's so bad.
Los Angeles. I was like, it took me, it must have taken me 45 minutes to go 5 miles.
And you know what? I think this is
yeah.
not even with true crime, but I think
Yeah.
everyone there is skinny and bone, like very like athletic and everything, is because of the hills, and everything is like uphill and like upstairs and narrow hallways and stuff.
Yeah,
there's no way I would survive in Hollywood.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Let me tell you, yeah.
It's rough.
No, you're fine. Let me tell you, it was great though. Hollywood, I mean, when you think about it, for true crime buffs like us, like I was there for probably a good 6 days. And, most of it was dedicated towards, remembering the victims. And I went to Sharon Tate's grave and all that. But you're in the middle of like crime central. When you think about it, because
it's all over the place.
Yeah, I went
especially the Sunset Strip.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, I went to Dorothy Stratton's house where she was murdered by her husband. Paul Schneider. I'm trying to think of some other
the Chateau.
I went to the Chateau Marmont. Yeah. So I mean that was pretty good.
There,
Yeah. So you like, for anybody who's a true crime buff, and anybody that's obsessed with true crime.
The Roxy,
yes. The
Viper Room.
Yes, the Viper Room. Yeah. So it was great.
I just played. My band played at the Whiskey, and I stayed at the Airbnb above the Rainbow. And I did it on purpose because I knew I just wanted to walk the streets at night and just be part of that whole vibe or whatever.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's got a lot of history.
It really does, And LA, and I mean, not to take away from LA. I mean, I loved it. I mean, I went down to Santa Monica and the beach and everything.
It's the best.
It's beautiful, Malibu.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I actually went up to Topanga Canyon because that's where Gary Hinman was one of the Manson victims. I went up to his place. I'm like, okay, gotta hit here, gotta go here. I had my little checklist.
So do you think now, like, all those other murders that happened around that time, do you think they were responsible for some of those?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, I have my own theories about Charles Manson. Everyone talks about Helter Skelter. And so we talked about Crime Con. And, I'm a big Crime Con person. For anybody that doesn't know, Crime Con is like the Super Bowl of true crime. They have it every year. It's in a different location. This year it's going to be September 22nd to September 24th, and it's going to be in Orlando. But CrimeCon is a convention kind of like Comic-Con.
I go to Monster Mania, so it's kind of like horror stuff. Yeah.
And you get people who converge from all different facets of law enforcement. Lawyers, lawyers, true crime victims, people that are involved in, forensic scientists. I met Dr. Henry Lee. But my point is, so you have true crime, and I'm sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. I met one of the Manson members at...
Really?
Yes.
Which one?
Okay, so it was New Orleans. It was CrimeCon 2019, New Orleans, and I met Diane Lake.
Wow.
So, yeah, and the thing is, you can get different badges at CrimeCon. You can get the standard badge, which gets you in. You get the gold badge, it comes with a little extra, and then you get the platinum badge. So I was like a platinum badge holder, and with that, you get to actually do a meet and greet with one of the guest speakers at CrimeCon. So,
of your choosing, or they pick a few?
You give a list of 3 or 4 that you'd like to meet, and you get to meet one of them. So for me, I was like,
the Manson
Diane
family
Lake.
member.
I'm like, Diane Lake. That's not even, that's a no-brainer. So here I am, and I'm sitting with Diane Lake. And, I knew a lot about Diane Lake before I sat down with her. And it's supposed to be a 5-minute meet and greet, which, by the way, turned into 20 minutes. So she had just come out with a book about, her life with the Manson family. And her publisher was from Smithtown. So I kind of knew that before I sat down. I was like, and her publisher, her co-writer was Deborah Heuermann. So, as I sit down, I was like... I was so nervous, but I was like, I gotta do this. So I'm like, I understand you're from Smithtown. She's like, yeah. I'm like, I'm from Long Island, and we spoke, and and then I spoke with Diane, and I said, thank you so much for meeting me. I said, I know you've had a hard life, and she kind of tried to dismiss it a little. Now, for anyone that knows about the Manson family, Diane was never involved in any of the killings, but she was instrumental in the trial because when Leslie Van Houten came home from after the whole LaBianca incident where, they murdered the LaBiancas, she had taken one of Rosemary LaBianca's change purses, and she was sitting on the bed at Spahn Ranch, and she was counting rare gold coins. And she said to Diane, she gave Diane the empty purse and said, I need you to burn this. So Diane was very instrumental in court. Her testimony really helped to convict some of the members of the Manson family. So
Didn't they give her like immunity?
They did.
Yeah.
You know, and she was one of the youngest members, by the way, of the Manson family. I think she was recruited when she was 13 years old. And for anyone that doesn't know,
crazy.
Think about this for a minute. Like, when you look at her life actually improved joining the Manson family. At first, it improved.
Wow.
When you look at where she came from, because her parents kind of moved to California from the Midwest, and they kind of dropped out. They started, doing acid and LSD, and they started to join all these different, like, hippie communities. And the problem was, Diane was she was at that weird age where she was like a young teenager, and there was really no spot for her in these communities, these hippie communities.
She had to grow up quick.
Yeah, so what happened was her parents actually gave her immunity. She had befriended, her family had befriended friends who were connected with the Manson family. And what wound up happening was, she was like 13, 14 years old. She went to a party one night, and when she got there, she'd never met any of these people. And members of the Manson family were there, and they're like, oh my God, Diane is here, Diane is here. So they actually knew about Diane Lake before Diane Lake actually met any of them.
Wow.
And for a girl like that, she was very young and impressionable, and they took her in, and she immediately grasped onto that. Like, for the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged.
Yeah.
Like, her parents,
That's
before they
sad.
joined the hippie community, were living out of a bread truck.
Oh, man.
So, it was like she just got sucked into the Manson family.
Yeah, I think about when
Yeah.
you're saying 13
Yes.
years old. I have a
Yeah.
niece that's close to that age, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking like her being in a situation like that. They could be as grown up as they could possibly be, but at the end of the day, they're still babies, man.
Yeah,
That's just crazy.
But now listen to this. So I'm sitting there with Diane Lake, and I know a lot about her, and she's trying to pass it off. Oh, it's okay, it's okay. And I'm like, no. I said, Diane, I know. I said, and I did start off, by the way, because she was a school teacher. I'm a school teacher. So I said, I understand you were a school teacher. She's like, yes, yeah. She's like, I said, I'm a school teacher. She's like, I'm like, what'd you teach? She's like, special ed. I said, oh, there's a special place in heaven for special ed teachers, And she's like, thank you. And we started off that way. But then I was kind of looking at my watch because I knew I only had about 10 minutes, and there were so many questions I wanted to ask her, but I wanted to kind of ease into it. But at the same time, in my head, it was like 60 minutes. I could hear the tick, 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 tick going off in my head because I'm like, I got to ask her these questions because she's going to boot me in a minute because I only have like a 5-10 minute meet and greet, But so we started talking, and I told her how sorry I was about, her being in the Manson family and the abuse that she went through. And she went through a lot of abuse, but Charles Manson used to beat her. And the one question I had for her, and she wasn't really able to answer it, I said, and this has always been a question in my mind, I said, did Charlie go back to Cielo Drive that night after the murders happened? Because there's been a lot of controversy about that, about whether or not he went back and he moved some of the bodies, or he went to look at the carnage and check it out. I am of the belief that he didn't. Because I think that he
left them there, right?
Yeah, I think he sent his minions out to do the dirty deeds because he didn't want to get his hands dirty. So why would you go back to the scene of the crime?
No, he didn't go back.
So, yeah. But she wasn't really able to answer that clearly for me, But we're sitting there talking, and one of the things that I read in Helter Skelter, and it always stayed with me, is like when Bugliosi and any of the investigators would interview any of the members of the Manson family, especially the girls, they'd have this starry look in their eyes. Like they were looking at you, but they were kind of looking past you.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there with her, and she's sitting there, and she's going off on Manson and how bad he is and this and that, but at the same time, like, she has a smile on her face. And it's like, it was almost like...
He still had a hold on her a little bit? Oh,
yeah. And he died the previous fall. This was in May of 2018. He had died in November of 2017, and she had just come out with her book. And I'm looking at her, and she's giving me that starry look, like she's sitting there saying, denouncing Manson, but at the same time, she's got this look in her eyes, and I swear to God, a shiver went down my back. I'm like, oh my God, she's still in love with him.
I'm sure she was.
And I was like, holy cow. And, we started talking, and I was asking more questions. She really got into it. And, like, somebody came over and said, oh, Diane, she's like, no, I'm talking here. So, like, I actually got to talk to her for at least a good 20 minutes.
That's great.
It was great. But but it was a little scary.
Yeah, no, it's. I'm
Because
sure it was.
I looked at her and I could just see it in her eyes. Like, she's sitting there denouncing Manson, but yet she almost wore, it was like a badge of honor that she was part of this Manson family and she was a part of this and a part of history. Like, she was proud of it, and I was like, and the thing that's going through my mind is, as I'm sitting there at the table with her, I'm looking at her, and two things couldn't escape me. Number one, I can't believe I'm sitting here talking to a former member of the Manson family. And I hate to say this, but I mean, truth be told, I'm talking to somebody who had sex with Charles Manson multiple times and probably had sex with many of the family members multiple times.
Yeah,
I'm like,
of course.
oh my God, this is surreal. I'm like pinching myself. I'm like, this is really happening.
I know.
Yeah, but it was crazy. But yeah, that's my Manson story. So
It's crazy.
Yeah.
You know what? I feel like he's gone, but he's not. He'll never go away
there
because
are
it's
people
just.
that still worship him.
Yeah, of course. I wonder what Squeaky is doing right at this moment.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Oh my
obviously, she leads a private life and everying,
Yeah.
and she really doesn't do any
Yeah.
interviews and stuff. But I'm curious.
It's funny because the week, Rex Heuermann got arrested on Thursday. Leslie got out the Tuesday before.
Two things that I thought that never would happen.
Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, like that should have been like my big thing that week, right?
I can't believe that she got out.
And I'm like, holy cow, Leslie Van Houten got out of jail. But now I'm like, holy cow, they just arrested somebody for, Long Island serial killer. So I'm going to have to put Leslie on the back burner right now and kind of focus on this.
Imagine that.
Yeah. So, but,
I wonder if Leslie's going to do a crime con now.
No.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
She might, though. Maybe she'll just tell about her.
I don't think that. See, that's the thing about CrimeCon. Like, they're all about the victims. They usually are talking about cold cases that haven't been solved.
Yeah.
And the victims' family members are sitting in the audience.
Yeah.
So the fact that Leslie was involved in one of the most heinous crimes in the United States, and
Doing
goes
meet and
down in the
greets and
annals
stuff,
of
yeah.
crime history, I don't think that they would want someone like that.
There.
And CrimeCon is definitely too controversial because a lot of the people that attend CrimeCon are all about crime victims' rights.
Right.
It's not about focusing on the killer. It's about focusing on the victims.
Right.
And it's about victim advocacy. So, that's really what I have a friend of mine. And he's like, oh, I want to go to CrimeCon with you because I want to dress up and I want to wear a glove that doesn't fit. I'm like, are you out of your mind?
Yeah, no, you
I'm
can't
like,
do
are you
that.
crazy? I'm like, do you realize that there are victims' families in the audience? It's not like Comic-Con where you can dress up as your favorite character. I'm like, this is serious stuff.
There's no Gacy
Yeah,
clown, like Pogo the Clown's not walking around.
I tell people about who I've met through CrimeCon. Like, I mean, it'll make your head spin. Like, I've met Christopher Darden. I've met, Kim Goldman. I've met Nancy Grace numerous times, but I've met Dr. Henry Lee, who is one of the leading, forensic criminologists and everything, forensic scientists. I met, a lot of different prosecutors and defense attorneys in famous cases. They had that Netflix special, Don't F with Cats.
Oh man!
So I met the people there. They presented
really?
at CrimeCon. That was really interesting.
That's a great documentary.
Yes, and so I've met so many. I've met a Columbine victim.
We have a call coming in.
Oh, okay.
Again, no guarantees, but we'll
All
see what
right.
happens here. You're live on the air.
Oh, Christine's going to bring me up and talk about me wanting to go to.
Can you turn your volume down? You're live on the air.
Sorry about that.
Hi, Mike.
So
I know who
Christine's
this
going
is.
to call about me wanting to go to CrimeCon and wearing gloves that don't fit. It's an invite for me to call in and.
All right. So for our viewers, our listeners, this is a friend of mine, Mike, and he loves to make fun of me and my obsession with true crime. So
I don't necessarily make fun of you. I'm one of those people who just don't get the obsession. That's all.
Well, because you and I come from two schools of thought, so I'm all about the victims, and I know that I'm very empathetic to that. So,
Yes.
but actually, we have Nick here. Nick,
What's up, dude?
Mike,
How are you?
Mike wants to ask
How
you a
you
question
doing,
because
Nick?
Mike loves horror movies.
Oh yeah. Hey, Mike.
I do. So I have a question, Nick, because no one I know has ever seen this movie, and I keep having to look it up to make sure I didn't invent it.
Okay.
children shouldn't play with dead
Of
things.
course, dude. Herschel Gordon Lewis.
Love that movie.
Yeah, man. No, that's a cult classic.
Yes.
Yeah, man. I haven't seen that in a while, but yeah, man. I definitely know that film.
Yeah. Mike,
So-
you're in your
so-
element, Mike. You got a friend for life here.
Yeah, when you drop children shouldn't play with dead things, it's already, you got a star for the day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh my
You
God.
can wear the glove that don't fit, dude. Go ahead.
Jesus.
Well, I have alternative theories
Oh, here we go.
to that case.
What, to
but I don't
OJ?
know if I'm
Oh,
allowed to
yeah.
talk
Oh, do
about
you
it
want to
on her-
hear this?
on
Are you
her
sure you
page.
want to hear this?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure me and this dude are gonna get along, so I might even agree with him with this. What do you think? What do you think? Jason did it?
No, my ex-mother-in-law was very much into the case when it was being tried, and she used to videotape it every day and come home from work and watch it every night.
Are you sure you're not talking about my mother right now, right?
No, this was unless your mother is my ex-mother-in-law, and I don't think so.
No.
So I had once told her that in the middle of the trial that OJ was innocent, and she got all mad at me. I said, "Well, they're looking at the wrong victim to find the murderer." I had suggested that perhaps Ron Goldman was the true victim, and that Ron Goldman's alternate lover was jealous of Ron and
Oh, all right.
Are you
her
really
relationship.
entertaining this? Please.
No,
And
I
he
mean,
showed up,
Don't give him
and he showed up,
any
and
more
he's the one that
encouragement.
I never
took
thought
care
of that.
business.
Oh, he doesn't
And
need
then
any
OJ really
encouragement.
did go there, and he doesn't remember being there because when he saw his wife semi-decapitated, he had a break with reality, and that's why the gloves that don't fit were there, because he was there. He just doesn't remember being there.
So
He
you
was
believe that he was
traumatized
in
by
his
what he saw.
so you believe that when he was in his hotel room that he actually had a glass in his hand and he crushed it in his hand, and that's where he got the cut on his finger.
Yeah, I mean, look, he was found not guilty, so
It's very
The
difficult.
glove didn't fit, but you know what? It didn't fit because it got all dried up and it was a leather glove, and I feel that OJ 100% did it, man.
Thank you. Let
100%.
me just interrupt for a minute. It's very,
I don't want to think that because I
Well, I
love.
always found it very interesting
Yes.
how he swore he was going to hunt for the killer.
Yeah,
and
well-
apparently he believed the killer was in every sand trap in every golf course in the nation.
Yeah, right. Dude, OJ, you know what? I love OJ from The Naked Gun. I saw one of the funniest things one day when someone said, "Oh, he was innocent" or whatever, and they was trying to back him, and he was like, "Well, let me see you run 3,000 yards in a season," and they're really standing up for him. I would have loved that OJ did not do this, but it just all leads up to him, man. He had that frog suit. Kardashian hit all the shit. It's just the perfect crime. He got away with it, and he had the sickest defense team, dude. He was not getting. They looked for that one slip up, and they pounced on Darden. He was inexperienced, and Johnny Cochran got up there with his pimp suit, and he was just like, "Here we go, boy. I'm going to teach you a lesson."
Oh, boy.
He was like Wesley Snipes in White Man Can't Jump. He was on that court. He knew what he was doing, and he hustled him. And he hustled him right. And that's all he did, man. I don't
Look,
believe
my
OJ
biggest-
didn't. I just don't believe OJ did it.
My
He
biggest
definitely
gripe with OJ,
Yeah.
is that he ruined one of the best playoff games I never got to see.
Oh, the Knicks. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember that, man. It interrupted the Knicks game, and it had, the little box with the Bronco, and it was going back and forth, and I actually got yelled at by my father because my father worked a double that day, and he went to sleep. And I woke him up, and I'm like, "Dad, OJ's in the Bronco, and they're driving him." And he's like, "You think I care about him?" And he got all pissed off and tried to go back to bed. But he got up and watched it with me, and that was huge. That was huge.
Yeah, that was crazy.
I just kept yelling. I just kept yelling at the LAPD. Just get up there, shoot out the tires, drag them out, and let me go watch the game. That's all I cared about.
Stop it.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's hard. I have to interrupt because
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. It's hard for me. I know Michael's being facetious, all right, But it's hard for me to listen to it having met Kim Goldman and thinking about the victims. And, I mean, so I always try to keep going back to the victims.
Poor
the
Ron
victims.
Goldman.
Yeah, I mean, talk
Even
about
poor
being in the
Nicole
right-
Brown. I mean,
Yeah.
even though whatever she might have been back in whatever, but she didn't deserve to die like that. And Ron Goldman was a young kid, man. Like, I think he went there because she invited him there, and he walked into a slaughter, and
Yeah.
that's why he's dead.
Talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time, yeah.
All kidding aside, regardless of whether he did it or didn't do it, nobody deserves to die the way they did.
No, and those poor kids too. You know,
yeah.
they were in the
Yeah.
house when that shit went down. So that even makes OJ a bigger piece of shit for doing that. Like, your kids are there and gonna kill their mother while they're in their own beds, and I don't know.
The whole thing is just.
And what did we get out of it? We got the Kardashian show and all that nonsense, which
Yeah.
is the most unholy thing, I think, aside from OJ.
Being famous just for being famous, I think, is a discussion for another channel.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's probably like more my speed on my podcast.
Yeah, I could talk about OJ for hours. I mean,
Yeah.
when I think about that case and I think about how the prosecution screwed up, I mean, Marsha Clark was given, a jury specialist, and she just kind of brushed off, Gil Garcetti and said, I don't need a jury specialist. I know how to pick a jury. Yeah.
They didn't work together.
Well,
Whereas like the Dream Team did.
Oh, no, I know. Yes.
The Dream
you're right.
Team were like, putting layups and stuff, and they were, not the basketball. I'm talking about them. They were like setting each other up. These two were
Yeah.
like, well,
Yeah.
like they were
Yeah.
scrambling and.
I mean, they had arguments over whether or not, they should make OJ try the glove on, and Christopher Darder was, just totally dismissed Marsha Clark. She said, don't do it, and unfortunately, he just
tried
went
to go
against
for
her,
it.
and yeah.
What really did the prosecution in my opinion, was allowing cameras in the courtroom.
Yes, I totally agree.
It really
Big
put such a
distraction.
different spin on how a trial like that should be conducted and handled. And there was so many mistakes and errors throughout as a result of it becoming more of a TV show than a trial.
It totally was. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was the crime of the century.
And Judge Ito should have never been trying that case because I believe he was married to a woman who worked for the LAPD. I mean, that right there, that's a conflict of interest.
Right.
I mean, yeah. I hate talking about the case because it's just sad.
The tragedy. I remember the day that they found him innocent, I was in high school.
No, hold on. They found him not guilty.
Not guilty.
yeah, I mean, I'm a stickler about that,
Yeah.
because is it really a difference between being innocent and being not
Right.
guilty?
They found not guilty. Yeah, I was in high
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
I was
There's
my off
never
period.
a determination of innocence. There's only a determination of that you're not guilty of the crime alleged.
Yeah.
So. Well,
So-
thank you, Mike.
Well, look, I heard the invitation to call, so I had to go.
right.
Yeah, man.
Well,
Thanks for
there you
calling. And, yeah, dude,
And,
children shouldn't play with dead things. Definitely, I remember
That's
that.
right. And my favorite Jane Fonda movie is Barbarella.
Oh,
Oh
okay.
yeah, I'm a 9 to 5 guy.
Yeah.
Barbarella, though, she looked good in that movie.
Do you know what? Do you know why Barbarella is infamous in rock and roll?
Because of Scott Weiland's song.
Nope.
What?
There's a band named in honor of the Barbarella movie.
Is there really?
Yes.
No. I don't
The bad guy. I'll end it on this and let you get back to what you're doing. The bad guy, the villain in Barbarella,
Yeah.
his name was Duran Duran.
Oh, okay. There we go. I didn't know that.
There you go.
All right, I'll go back. I got to get off and enjoy watching.
All right.
Take care,
Thank you
ma'am.
so much for calling in,
Thanks.
Mike. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So, yeah, but, wow, we could talk all night, true crime. So,
Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We didn't even really touch on the Rex thing.
I know. Well, thinking about that, I mean, we look at yesterday, the court order came down from Judge Tim Massey that he's got to give a swab. So, yeah, cheek swab. I know that the defense was fighting that, but I think
They got to do it, right? Now it's ordered down from the judge.
The judge
yeah.
said, "Look, there's enough evidence here, and we need the DNA." So I'm hoping that certainly leads to more answers, more information, possibly more, things that could be, tied to Rex, deaths out there that are tied to him. So,
Do you think that he was involved in all of it, or no?
I don't know, and I don't know that I want to even give an opinion on that right now
Because it's so early.
so early in the case.
Yeah. You know how I feel about it. I've said it.
Everyone has their conspiracy theories.
Right.
I will say this, and obviously this is just an opinion, so take it for what it's worth. I think that Shannon Gilbert's death is not, I think that's separate. I think that one happened in Oak Beach, the way that it went down, the way that she went missing that night, her location, where her body was found. It wasn't in the same exact manner as the others, and I think that, I certainly hope that Suffolk County Police Department keeps that case active, because I think
so,
that
too.
there are other people that possibly persons that are responsible for Shannon's, murder, and that's something that, I will never stop following until that her family receives justice.
Unfortunately, I think that it's never going to be solved, because I feel like they have it the way that they want it, and that poor girl is just going to be put on the back burner again, because I feel like, like I said, it's just they don't want to admit the truth. I think she walked into something, she saw something that wasn't right, and she ran for it, and she didn't drown in an inch of water.
Yeah.
know?
I mean, I mentioned this on my first episode. John Ray spoke actually at Blue Point Bayport Library last week, and one of the things that he mentioned, and it really is thought provoking, is that she was a sex worker, but she feared for her life that night. And what did she do? She got on the phone and called the cops. Like,
what's sex worker doing that?
Exactly. Like, you don't want to get caught. You don't want to get arrested for being a sex worker, but something made her fear for her life that she felt she had no choice but to get on the phone and call the police. So, so that,
Sad.
It is sad, and I really have to commend Rodney Harrison and his team of investigators and Ray Tierney that, they're not letting up. They're looking into all these other murders. And I'm hoping that, they include Shannon in that. And, I hope that they continue to go down that path and find out who is responsible for her death.
Well, I think they also have to do a stellar job and give this, like, on a silver platter, just to make their reputation and their face again, like, in a positive way, because they got a lot of flack,
they did,
for
but I don't
that.
It's funny you say that, because I really don't I keep it separate. I keep Rodney Harrison, Ray Tierney, and the new regime, the new administration
from the old regime.
Yes,
Yeah.
I definitely keep them separate. Out with the old, in with the new.
I hope
and
so.
obviously, it's hard to talk about the Gilgo Beach case without talking about the corruption that went on. There was obvious corruption. You got Thomas Spoda in jail. You had Burke do 44 months in jail for beating up Christopher Loeb. These are things that can't be overlooked. It's in, it's in the paper. It's been published.
Right.
He admitted his guilt. So, what do you, it's funny because I've talked with Suffolk County police officers and, that are friends of mine that are on the force. And they said, look, the thing about James Burke, he's a cop's cop. Like, cops respect him for the work he did as a police officer. But unfortunately, he tainted his career on the tail end because of things that happened.
Yeah.
Actually, we could go way back and talk about before he even became a cop. I don't know. Are you familiar with the whole John Pius case?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, think about that. He was involved
I think that's the reason
court.
why he got to the position.
Yeah. Thomas Spoda turned around and said, hey, I'll help you out. I'll lift you up. You want a job with Suffolk County Police Department, Yeah, I don't want to get into too many details because, people
For
can
those
read
that
about
people
it.
don't know, definitely Google that and look that up, because it's really interesting if you read all about that.
Yeah, but the corruption just goes...
Oh, there he is.
It goes way back.
The world famous Chris Roach.
Ah, very nice. Come on in.
Hey, what's
how
up,
are
dude?
you?
How are you?
Let me interrupt you.
That's all right.
I just want to see his face.
All righty. So,
No, I got a guest here.
Okay.
I gotta entertain.
yes.
What are you guys doing?
Podcast.
Actually, you used to have a podcast. They're talking about famous crimes on Long Island.
Oh,
Yes.
shit.
And you used to have a podcast.
A Long Island podcast. Sometimes we covered like some of the crimes.
Nice.
There was one crime I'm trying to think. We did the one episode. We decided never to air it because we thought it was just like too soon. I'm trying to think what it was. They found a girl's body in the woods and they just had closure and we're like, maybe it's too soon.
Was it the boyfriend that killed the girl and dumped the car on the parkway?
That sounds like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he made like the phone
that
calls
was the
and
Seaford
stuff.
Oyster Bay, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I
I
remember
forget that
yeah.
girl's name, but they found.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a
They found-
crazy
Solomon?
thing.
Yeah.
No,
the
Solomon
Solomon.
happened
That
in
was-
Huntington.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was, yeah.
Was her name Christine also?
I think so.
Yeah.
It was one of
A
those
couple of years
cases
ago,
that-
maybe
yes.
like about 10 years
Yes.
ago.
Yeah,
Yes.
and they found something or recent. I
He
don't
was
know.
texting off of her phone to him to kind of like be like, "Oh, babe, don't worry, I'll be home soon,"
Yeah.
or whatever. And he was trying to cover it up, and then he
the
ended up killing her.
Yeah, the Matthew Solomon case that happened out in Huntington. I remember when that happened. That was when News 12 first went on the air, and that was a big case for them. They started like coverage with that one, and yeah, so
Crazy stuff.
Spooky.
yes.
Long Island's full of spookies.
Speaking of spooky, there goes Chris Rose, ladies and gentlemen. There he goes.
Very nice meeting you.
See you later, brother.
So I guess we should probably wrap up. But thank you so much for
Whatever.
coming on. This was great.
Wow, that was an hour already, huh?
I know. Well, hey, you and I, we could probably talk.
Yeah,
true
absolutely. We
crime
could share
hours
war
on end.
stories all day.
So yeah, but,
We'd be still stuck on Spawn Ranch.
Yeah, right. Oh my god. Anyway, but thank you so much for sharing your insight. But let me ask you
Absolutely.
before we leave.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
some of my my cases that I obsess over. I talked about Son of Sam. I talked about Charles Manson. Obviously, the Rex Heuermann case, Gilgo Beach. There's another case out there that we didn't even touch upon. Case of Dr. Jeffrey McDonald. He and his wife were from Patchogue, but he was a Green Beret Army officer who wiped out his family out in Fayetteville, North Carolina, February 17th, 1970. But that case always gets to me because I always look for the Long Island angle.
Yeah.
So both of them were graduates of Patchogue Medford High School, class of 1961. So Fatal Vision was a book that was written on the case. You might be familiar with that, but that's another case I'm very much into. But, there's so many cases on Long Island. But what's your case? What's the one that you are obsessed with?
There's two of them.
Okay.
So first one is Amy Fisher and Joey Buttafuoco.
Okay.
Of course, I had a crush on Amy Fisher because she was from she was from Merrick. I'm from Belmore, and she was a young girl, and it's just like a crazy story. And I was very young at the time when it happened, so she was like maybe 5 years older than me. So I was just like, oh man, it's a very good looking girl, and this is a crazy story. So I came obsessed with that. And my ultimate obsession is definitely the Amityville house.
Oh, yeah.
My ultimate dream in life is to own the Amityville house. I've always wanted to buy it. It's always, it goes up for sale every couple of years. I'd love to turn it into a bed and breakfast.
All right. So let me, oh boy, that's a tall order. Wow.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, do you believe the whole thing that the house was haunted? Do you believe all that?
Well, I met Lorraine Warren. She was a demonologist, and the movies The Conjuring and stuff are based on her work and And when I met her, I asked her about the house, and she said that not for any amount of the money in the world, she would never walk and step foot into that house because she had very bad juju.
Wow.
I'm not going to be completely convinced that the house is haunted or not until I step foot in it.
Okay.
I would think that DeFeo was totally, high on drugs, and he hated his father, and I think that he did slaughter his whole family.
That's true.
100%.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, when the Lutzes moved in, I don't know. Did they want to monetize living in that house and say that it was spooky or whatever?
That. That's my school of thought. Is that
I mean,
they
it's a
got
big-
in over their heads.
They got I feel like it brought them a lot of money and everything, but like, I don't know. I just I have to see it for myself. That's why I'm like mesmerized with it, and I don't think the town of Amityville would allow me to ever turn it into a bed and breakfast.
Good luck with that.
I don't know.
Good luck.
But even so, I mean, maybe I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just let some friends over and like.
The reason
hang out.
I think that it's false is just because there have been so many families that have bought that house since the DeFeos.
Yeah.
Aside from the Lutzes, they were the first family, but after that, they moved out. You've had that. You even said it yourself. The sale of that house many times over.
Every couple of years.
And,
the last
and
time,
people haven't said anything. Like, you'd think they would come out and say, "Oh yeah, the house is haunted," but you haven't heard anything. People have said it's fine. And the sad part is, the house doesn't even look the way it looks.
No.
Looked, with those the windows that look
Not
like
if
eyes.
I owned it. Those windows are going back in. The High Hope sign is going back up.
Yeah. When because when I drove by the house, I was like, oh, it doesn't even look the way it is.
The only way that you know that it's the same house is because it's facing the other way, and it's the only house on the block that's like that.
Yes.
So that's the only way.
Yeah, and it's funny you talk about houses. Like when I went up to Cielo, I went up after 1994. I don't know if you know 9 Inch Nails.
Yeah, Trent Reznor.
Yes. He actually had the door. Actually, the door.
The door just is up
Yes,
for auction.
for auction, yeah.
So they were saying that it was going to go for like $4,000 or $5,000.
I know.
Just let me go on record. If it was for $4,000 or $5,000,
I would have
bought it. I probably would have bought it for 10.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
But now it's up over like
$25,000. Let me tell you, that's gonna go for lots and lots.
I think it's gonna go for like 50.
But getting back to the house, like they built that monstrosity of a mansion there, and I mean the original house was so beautiful.
Yeah, it was.
It was. It was a French country ranch, and I regret the fact that I didn't get to see the original structure.
I know.
But,
yeah. When I got there, it was totally different. I
Yeah,
think it was
yeah.
around the time. The first time I had seen it was like probably like 1991 or 92.
Oh, so you did see the original?
Yeah.
Then. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, my father actually, you know what? Like, you couldn't really drive up to it, so you could go. I went around, and my father, this is back in the day with maps and everything. He knew where to drive up in those those hills and stuff, and park over this overlook that looked down right onto.
Oh
it.
yeah, Benedict Canyon Drive's there, and now with that monstrosity, like you go down Benedict Canyon Drive and you can see it up in the hill. I mean, it just is like front and center up there. But I would have loved to have seen the original structure.
Yeah, no, I did.
It's just You
know what? If I got to find I have a Polaroid. And I also have a rock that I took from overlooking the house.
Okay.
So
Well,
I
you
saw
own a
that.
rock. I actually own. Can't believe I'm going to say this. I actually own a piece of the fireplace from the original structure.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
All right.
So that was through Scott Michaels when he would do the tour. He went up there when it was being torn down, and he actually took pieces of the fireplace and stuff. And people who went on the tour early enough in the beginning of its tour days would actually get a little piece of the fireplace.
I was part of a bid once for one of Gacy's paintings too, but I lost at that. But I did win one other thing that I have. It's a TV guide of Eileen Warnos.
Oh, interesting. Very nice. All right.
Another poor soul.
Yeah, I'm more about the victims. I actually, when Sharon Tate's sister Deborah had put a lot of her stuff up for auction back in, I think it was 2018, Julian's auction house.
Yeah.
I actually own one of her dresses.
You do?
So yeah, that was a pretty penny, but it was worth it, and it's one of my treasured, collections.
You have it framed?
So, yeah. No, I have it. I have it preserved, but.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I could never fit in it. It's like made for a woman who has like a stick figure size too, which obviously I'm not. But so, yeah. But it's a nice dress. It's a casual dress. It's nothing. It's nothing. None of her famous clothing. I couldn't even touch that. I mean, it went for over thousands and thousands. So I try to go with the cheapest thing. Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
That's
cool.
I
would have bought a muumuu. It doesn't matter.
I know. I actually own. Okay, here's another thing that I own. Talking about true
So
crime.
now the true crime obsession's
here
really
we go,
coming out. We're
yeah.
getting down and dirty.
I actually own a piece of the yellow crime scene tape from the Nicole Brown Simpson's house.
Okay.
Yeah. So there you go.
And
Yes. So
now we're like Quint and Hooper sharing scars and jaws.
I know.
I stayed in the murder room of where Jeffrey Dahmer killed his second victim in
my
the
God.
Ambassador Hotel
Jeez.
just recently.
Jeffrey Dahmer?
Yeah.
In the Ambassador Hotel?
Yeah.
Or, oh, wow.
At the Ambassador, the
Okay.
second victim.
Okay, see, now that case, I know of it. I watched a Netflix special. Which
Unbelievable.
Oh, my God, that was amazing.
Right.
So, yeah. So the actor that played Jeffrey Dahmer just simply hit
Evan
it out
Peters,
of the ballpark.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played Milwaukee Metal Fest with my band back in
Okay.
May, and I was flying there, and I already had a hotel about a mile away, and my band wasn't coming till the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, wait a minute. The Ambassador's right across the street. Let me call up. There's no way that they have the murder room available tonight with a Metal Fest coming in, because there has to be at least one other crazy sicko like me flying in that wants to see it.
Oh, my
I
goodness.
call them up. I ask for the room, and they're like, oh, yeah, we have that available for tonight.
So you say Ambassador Hotel. My thought goes to California.
Yeah,
Ambassador
yeah.
Hotel. But, one of the rooms I want to stay in, I play poker, and sometimes, we play tournaments in Florida, and I want to go to the Hard Rock down in Florida where Anna Nicole Smith.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where she expired in that room. And, yeah.
I've also stayed in the murder room at the Lizzie Borden house.
Oh, yes. A couple of
That was spooky as hell. I
Yes,
felt the
yes.
presence there.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a little much for me. I don't know. But anyway. Well, listen, it was great talking with you
Absolutely,
tonight.
Christine. Thank you
and
so much.
Thank you for coming on the show. This was awesome. I
Yeah.
said, I could probably talk to you all night long.
Oh, now we're like best friends. We're going to be calling each other every night.
There you go.
Tell me
I'll
about
keep
the
you in the
dress.
loop with, Long Island Crime Expo and all the events coming up
Yeah,
with
please,
Gina
please.
Leone. And, but this was great. And, hey, listen, if you ever get a chance, you should definitely go to CrimeCon. I think you'd
I
love
will.
it. So, all right. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. And this is My True Crime Obsession checking out. And thank you for your support always. And keep following. And I will check back in soon. Take care, guys.